Folks, if you need some new camouflage, don't look any farther than ASIO Gear. They have a great line of products that covers everything you could possibly need at a very reasonable price, especially if you use that code ECHO15 that they offer all of our listeners. And if you're worried about it, the stuff got a lifetime warranty, so if something goes wrong with it, they replace it, no questions asked. Go over to ASIOgear.com and check them out. If you need some new broadheads, you ought to check out Razor Broadheads. They have an awesome, dependable head that is tough as nails. I've used them for the last 3 years, and the wound channel that these broadheads leave has been really impressive to me. They're super sharp, super accurate, and they offer 20% off if you use the code BTE. So go over to razorbroadheads.com and get you some new broadheads. And then Stealth Outdoors. Hey, if you're not using stealth strips, you're not trying. Get your gear silenced with stealth strips. And then the product's not that expensive anyway, but if you use code BTE10, you get another 10% off. Now, just because it's not expensive doesn't mean it's not good quality stuff. This is the best silencing material on the market, hands down. Go over to stealthoutdoors.com. Hey, and then you got to have some saddle gear that you can use with your stealth strips. The guys over at Latitude make all kinds of great products, and right now on their website, they're offering 20% off everything. Their Method 2 saddle is actually 30% off. And then if you get over there and the sale's over or something, you're listening to this later on, use your code BTE and you go ahead and get 15% off everything. Go over to latitudeoutdoors.com if you need any saddle hunting gear. And finally, a new partner for the show, Hawke Optics. Listen, if you're in the market and you need some new optics, these guys offer a great product at an affordable price. They're also offering everybody 15% off if you use the code BTE. They got a line of everything you would need in all different price points, from rangefinders to binocular rangefinders to spotting scopes to all different types of rifle scopes and even some red dots. So go over to hawkeoptics.com and check them out. Use that code BTE, save you 15%. All my partners are in the description below. Go check them out. All right, let's get to the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Special guest tonight, Mr. Don Higgins, is on the show to talk some land improvement and whitetails. Thanks for coming on, Don.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Josh. Glad to do it.
I was going to tell you before we started on all the whitetail stuff, something I really admire about you, Don, is your dedication to Christ and like what you believe in. You're not afraid to tell people about that. And I know that's not always best for business all the time. We do a Bible study on here every week. And some people don't like it, but that's all right, you know. So I wanted to say that before I get on. I know you guys used to do some stuff on Sundays, didn't you?
Yeah, we have a Sunday night prayer time after our podcast. We release the Chasing Giants podcast on Sundays, and then at the end we have a different speaker every week with a short prayer time message. But yeah, I am who I am. Not going to try to hide it from anybody. And some people like it, some people don't. But
yeah,
it's not going to change me one way or the other.
No, I think that's a good way of being. It's yeah. I think in the end, that's the way to be. I think you're money ahead when it comes to that, where it matters.
Yep.
Anyways, Don, what year did you start doing your consulting work in the whitetail world?
Well, I don't remember the exact year, but it's been 20 years ago, between 15 and 20 years ago, probably 18 to 20, something like that. I don't even remember.
Yeah, it's you've become quite a household name when it comes to consulting. And how many 200 inches have you killed on your properties now, Don?
Well, I've killed 3 total, 2 on my farm and 1 on a permission property.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And you were doing it. I mean, you killed your 200 incher whenever it wasn't popular to kill a 200 incher, if you know what I mean. Like, you killed one back whenever they weren't, as readily available as they are now. Not that they're readily available, but you were doing it when nobody else was doing it.
Yeah, that first one I didn't even have trail cameras at the time. So, and the other thing is, a lot of people think I only shoot bucks on my home farm. I've got it tricked out, and that's where I shoot them all. And that's not the case either. Which I do have a fantastic property that I've worked for about 30 years to develop, but some of my bigger bucks have come on permission properties. And besides the 214, I've got a 193 and a 185 and a bunch in the 150s, 160s that came on just permission properties.
Yeah. It's weird how people like take things away from people in the deer hunting world. Like, I feel it all the time because I hunt some public land and I hunt some private land. I'm kind of like you. I'm kind of whatever the opportunity brings. Like if I have a bigger deer on public than I do on my private farms, I'm going to go after that, but if I shoot one on a private farm or something, it's not on public or it's on a managed piece that I hunt or something. It's like some people just frown on that. And that's irritating to me because like, yeah, man, I put in hours of sweat and hard work in some of the little pieces of private I hunt, just because it's not public doesn't mean it's not cool in my book,
Well, everybody thinks that however they do it is the only way and it's the hardest way. And not doing it their way, then you're not near the hunter they are.
Yeah.
Crazy, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, everybody, I put a video out on this YouTube channel Saturday about what me and Don, what we talked about before the show. For anybody that just needs to get caught up, I own a little 4-acre bean field right behind my house. I mean, I'm looking at it through my window here, and the farmer's not going to farm it next year. So I'm got the opportunity to kind of do whatever I want to with it. And I thought we just pull it up here and maybe me and Don can just talk through some stuff and then see where that conversation leads us to talk about maybe specifics, whether it be whitetail trees or screenings or whatever the case may be. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this up here, Don. Give me just bear with me here. It takes me a couple seconds to share my screen.
Okay.
Can you see that? Can everybody see that in the chat? Okay, so I'm going to give everybody a backstory because I didn't do a very good job in the video. Some people were telling me about the backstory of this property. My grandparents used to own pretty much what you see right here, this big field here. Originally, it was just this house right here, and my grandma did not want to live. She had 5 kids. She did not want to live this close to the White River. So they actually ended up selling this little acre right here with the house on it, and they built this house right here. And this is where I live now. I bought this place off my grandparents. My uncle lives right here. He bought this little section off of them, and he built a house right there a long time ago. And then my parents live right here. And then this is my house, and my grandma was 94, lives right here now. We kind of take care of her, and she lives next door. So I own pretty much this bean field and this little patch woods right here. And this patch woods, my grandpa planted this back in the 70s. Not a lot of cover in there. It's a bunch of there's some white oak, there's some persimmons in there, there's some walnut trees, just kind of a mixture of stuff that he threw in there. No real rhyme or reason to his madness there. He actually used to be a running pen for beagles. He had it all fenced in, and he raised beagles back there. So I got a clean slate, this field right here. And what is kind of unique about this property is if you kind of zoom out here, there is not a lot of cover. This river is a pretty substantial river. It's probably 60 yards wide. And there's just not a lot of cover kind of in my general area unless you go up here by the highway, and then you got some bigger timber and some wood. So I've lived here for 8 years, and I've never seen a white-tailed deer on my property. So I'm literally starting from ground zero as far as the deer go and what I can do with it. Obviously, this direction up here is north, Don. Mm-hmm. And whenever you see something like this, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Obviously, it's small. It's only 4 acres. But do you think about cover? Do you think about food first?
Well, I'm always looking for the weakest link in the whole area. So whether that be food or cover, you get an area with a lot of cover, then food becomes, the magnet that draws the deer. And it looks like where you're at, covers at a premium. So that seems to be the weakest link from what I'm seeing. And you provide the deer with what's in shortest supply, and your success will be better than if you're trying to supply what they've already got plenty of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm surrounded by crops. I mean, there's crop fields across the road, across the tracks right here. This is a crop field. So yeah, I was, would you even bother planting a food plot in here, or would it be something like maybe just a little half-acre kill plot?
Personally, I would not. I think the cover is so critical. What I would do is I'd mix in some mass-bearing trees
Okay.
and create, soft mass like persimmons, apples, pears, screen the edge of that, and a lot of browse species too, shrubs. But I would, it's real easy for me to jump right on this. I'd surround or put the border in probably a couple, at least two different rows of conifers.
Okay.
Probably Norway spruce on one row, and eastern red cedars on the other row. And then inside that, I would put a couple of rows of oaks that hold their leaves, such as shingle oaks, pin oaks. And then inside of that, it would just be a mixture of, the occasional oak, the occasional cedar, but I would mix in persimmons, specifically grafted female persimmons, some pears and some apples, and probably some chestnuts as well. And, shrubs, dogwoods, elderberry, American plum, things like that. Although if you start getting deer in there, those shrubs are a lot harder to establish than trees are.
Yeah.
The deer just browse them so hard. But my guess is when you get started, you're not going to have that much browse pressure until those trees start getting up head high, and the conifers get up head high where it's screened real well. You probably have some nighttime deer activity, but you're looking at about a 10-year project to get that place where you have a chance to kill a nice buck.
Yeah. And that's okay with me. I'm not, it may not even be a place where it just may be a place where I like to have deer here,
Uh-huh.
And something else that's kind of important to me is our, like small game and stuff too. I kind of want to make sure that there's something for everything in there,
Mm-hmm.
Especially here in Indiana. They've kind of gone away with our CRP programs, and I don't know, the farming world seems to not really think about wildlife too much anymore. And, I could think of probably 100 acres of woods and fence lines that have gotten taken out in the last 3 or 4 years around me. So it's kind of important to me to have a diverse habitat. Would you plant like this first year some kind of I know you guys sell like a screening product, Don.
I don't think it's that important. I don't think you're going to have much the first few years.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to screen. I'd just start on your permanent, tree species and such. And I don't know what was there last year, but bean stubble is ideal to get started. So I would probably go out and frost seed that as soon as possible in a mix with a lot of clover in it. And then red top is a grass species, a cool season grass species that doesn't get such a dense fibrous root system that it's going to, compete with those trees too bad. The clovers will being legumes, they'll put some nitrogen in the soil. But, I'd go out there with a mix of about 75% ladino clover, 25% red top. I'd frost seed that entire field and then go to planting the trees and unless if the weeds get out of control, then I would mow between the rows. But
Yeah.
if the weeds don't get out of control, I just let it go, and it'll grow quicker than you think. And 3 or 4 years from now, those Norway spruce around the edge should be, getting up chest high to shoulder high, and it wouldn't be too long they'd be head high. And at that point, you're probably going to start seeing the wildlife come in.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on like pine, like white pine, over the spruce?
I'm not a fan because the deer are just so hard on them.
Okay. I just asked that because the state of Indiana almost gives you the white pines.
Well, I've got some on my place that I planted years ago before I had deer here, and they're big now. I mean, you could easily put a tree stand in them, but
yeah,
I planted a lot of Norway spruce too, and I don't know, the more experience I got, I just started favoring the Norway spruce. They don't grow quite as fast, but they don't get the deer browse pressure. And even on those bigger pines, the deer will eat the needles on those lower branches. They got a much softer needle than the Norway spruce, and the deer will eat them, especially in the wintertime, whereas the spruce, they pretty much leave them alone.
Yeah. I was worried about that. I mean, I am and I am not, just because of the fact of the lack of deer around here, but in the future, yeah, you're definitely right. You don't want your screening to be not a screening because the deer tore up all the trees.
Yep.
And then you're saying oaks, that shingle oaks or pin oaks that keep their leaves. Is that what you said earlier?
Yeah, they keep their leaves in the winter.
Yeah.
Provide more cover. I mean, they'll provide just as much cover as a conifer in the wintertime because they hold their leaves. They shed their leaves in the spring when the new bud pushes the old leaf off. So they provide a whole lot of screening cover as well.
Yeah, that's something I didn't even think about. I was thinking about fruit trees and kind of spreading out when those would be falling for the deer, but I didn't think about my oaks and planning that out for cover during deer season. What's your thoughts on actual, like, just white oaks? I mean, is that going to be okay? Something to plant in the middle, kind of?
Yeah, I'd scatter a few in the middle.
Okay. And then from there, you got your hardwoods or your oaks there, and then you put the fruit trees in the center then.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're kind of screened, and but I mean, I wouldn't, if it was me, I wouldn't like plant organized rows, and I would group them by species. So you got a cluster of apple trees and a cluster of pear trees and a cluster of persimmons and chestnuts, and that'll help you with pollination. If you got all the species or all the trees of one species kind of clumped together. But I'd make it real random. I wouldn't go out and put them in rows. Now, I would go around the edge with your conifers and those 2 rows of oaks, and I would put those in rows. Mm-hmm. Then when you get into the middle, I'd be very random about it.
Yeah. How, like, in your mind, when you're looking at something like this, Don, how much are you thinking about like deer movement and where you could set up on the deer on a little property like this?
On one that small, very little.
Okay.
I mean, it's way more important just to get them bedded in there. I mean, the best spot is obviously going to be the northwest corner. That's going to be where a lot of the deer come and go as they follow that river, and the north end of that timber that's already there.
Right. I will say this. Now, I don't think they're going to do this during daylight hours, but when I do see deer tracks on this place, they're always coming across the road here and going down into the bottoms. This is like a river bottom. This is hills up here. Mm-hmm. So they're obviously coming from this cover to go down. Just a little. I am in a little bit of a little transition between this cover and then the river bottom down here. There's some decent sized timber up through here.
But as far as a huntable location, you're probably not going to want to set up between your house and your uncle's. right out there in the yard.
No, right.
The back side of that property is going to be your ideal location. And
Yeah.
I mean, I could pinpoint exactly where your best stand's going to be right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Them filtering out of my bedding area, which I'll have into the crops there. The only thing I worry about is this field right here. Maybe this is something I shouldn't worry about, but this field right here is actually as soon as the crops come off of it, they typically put cattle in it, which isn't ideal. But
Well, it'll help funnel the deer right over to your place.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. So frost seed the whole thing in clover.
Ladino, clover, and red top.
Okay. I was thinking about how much equipment I would need for a little project like this, but you're kind of, I don't need anything really, a shovel and a spreader.
Well, a seedling planter that's pulled behind a tractor would be the biggest thing.
Yeah.
For planting those 4 outer rows, but they're in the middle. Shovel. And I'd use bare root seedlings around the edge, but when I got into that middle section, I'd use potted trees, give you a big head start.
Yeah, because it's not like I'm planting 40 acres of trees or anything. It's going to be okay. Yeah. Well, this is good news for me because I was overthinking this place a little bit too much. I was thinking,
it's not big enough to supply everything.
Right.
If you had a food plot in there, I mean, my theory on food plots is bigger is better. The bigger the plot, the more pulling power. A small plot in that patch is not going to attract more deer to your patch. It's just not big enough. The cover is what's going to bring those deer in. Security. I mean, you're going to have to keep people and dogs out of it. But if you keep people and dogs out of it, there's a good chance you get a family group or maybe just a doe and her fawns or something to stay there. And the bucks are going to know, where to check out in the rut.
Yeah.
I mean, you kill a deer there. There's no doubt about it. But
right.
How big, who knows?
Right. Yeah. And like I said, it's not necessarily a spot where I'm too awfully concerned about killing a big buck there every year. It's more of I got the field and I need to do something with it. And I want to do whatever is going to maximize the amount of productivity for the wildlife,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's simple. That's pretty simple then. All right, let's throw this off the screen here. Some people were asking about if you plant any switchgrass in there.
No. I mean, in that mix with the Ladino clover and the red top, I'd maybe put 1 pound of switchgrass. So you just have random clumps here and there. But, 1 pound spread over 4 acres is not that much. And
yeah,
but yet it's enough that it's going to give you some instant cover, some clumps here and there. But
yeah, if the property had a little more cover, let's say my dad's place here was more of a CRP field or some kind of cover, would that be a different scenario? Then would you start planting food in this area? These are just questions from the comment section people are asking, Don.
Well, with the size of the property, you're going to, in my opinion, need to pick food or cover. And cover is going to be the key. And with the fruit trees, you can kind of have both. The other thing is the smaller the property, the more critical human intrusion becomes. So you put a plot in there, that just means you're going to be in there more dealing with that plot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point because I'd be in there tinkering with it all the time. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm sure my son's going to be riding his 4-wheeler and stuff in there every now and again, which it is what it is.
Yep.
When you go to clients to work with them on their property, Don, what's like the number one thing you typically see that people are doing wrong on one of their properties?
Too much human intrusion.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Too much human intrusion, food plots that are too small, not having good stand access, not playing the wind. Those are the big things. No sanctuary. They're trying to hunt every acre they have, not giving the deer anything.
I struggle with access on a lot of my properties. It's something that I have a hard time with, just the way they're laid out. It's something I need to work on some of my other little properties I hunt. I often feel like certain times I'm kind of the hunt's over before it even begins. But something I need to improve on.
Well, if you got poor access, it probably is over before it begins.
It is. Yeah. What is something that, like, a guy that owns some land, what is something that you would recommend, like one thing that they could do that would improve it right off the bat? Like if I just bought 40 acres, is there some kind of a chore that guy could do this time of year that's going to help for deer season?
Well, create some thick bedding cover and then stay out of it. There's more good deer properties ruined by too much human intrusion than anything else. And, when you start doing habitat projects and such, your property starts at a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start doing projects and that property just increases in, the number of deer that's there and the habitat, the quality of the habitat. But once you reach a certain point, all of a sudden it crashes and it's way down lower than where you started in terms of attraction to mature bucks. So, quality habitat is one thing, but human intrusion is even more critical. I'd rather have a property with average habitat but zero human intrusion than the best habitat in North America with too much human intrusion. Human intrusion kills more properties than anything.
Yeah.
I don't think most deer hunters have a clue how little human intrusion it takes to run a property for mature bucks.
What do you think? Like, yeah, because a lot of guys, you go buy 100 acres and you're excited about it and you want to just sit there and hunt it, and you hunt it 4 or 5 times before October 15th gets here, and all of a sudden you're like, "Well, my property sucks." Well, you should have waited those 4 or 5 times to the wind was right, or the deer are on the property. So,
well,
yeah,
it's a lesson I learned the hard way. I ruined more properties than I could count. When I was younger, and I'd get permission on and this is back before I owned anything. I'd get permission on a new property, deer everywhere, and the first 2 or 3 hunts, I'd see lots of deer, and then it would taper off. And I hunted hard. I hunted every day, and within about 2 weeks, I was hardly seeing any deer. And so I'd go, and this is back in the day where it was easy to get permission. So I'd go get permission on another one, boom, deer everywhere. 2 weeks later, I'd burned it out. And I did this for years and burned out properties. And finally, I realized that the problem was me. Those deer were catching on to me. And if I wouldn't have been there, the deer would have stayed there. But I was just burning them out. And well, once I realized that and took a totally different approach, the properties I was hunting, I would still see bucks after gun season. And before, I would never see bucks after gun season. I mean, I just totally burned them out. And today, that's not the case at all.
How many times a year do you hunt, Don?
Oh, it varies. Probably not near as much as I used to, but
yeah,
it doesn't take near as long as it used to either to kill my target buck. So, I mean, last year I killed my target buck on October 7th, and I hunted several times after that. But there was not a buck I really wanted to shoot. I was just out there sitting in a tree watching deer, filming deer, having fun. But it's when you don't have a deer, when you're sitting there and there's not a buck around you're going to shoot, it does take some of the fun out of it. So,
yeah.
My goal every year is just to go one-on-one with the best buck I can find. And I don't care where he's at. I run cameras on public land every year, private permission properties every year, and on my own farm every year. And wherever the biggest buck turns up, that's the one I'm going after. And I'll walk away from all the rest. I think last fall I had the cameras on 26 different properties in 3 states. One property in Iowa, one property in Ohio, and then 24 properties in Illinois. I own 2 of those. And the rest of them were all permission properties, no food plots, no habitat work whatsoever. And I don't think people recognize or realize that I spend a lot of time hunting those kinds of properties. But what I'm doing is I'm just searching for the biggest buck I can find. And wherever he happens to be, that's where I'm going after him.
Where do you see them usually, the biggest bucks? Like, you've obviously found a bunch of them over the years. Is there like a property? Is there a certain feature or something you like to look for in a piece of property?
Absolutely. Freedom of human intrusion. I would rather hunt 5 acres by myself than 500 with one other hunter, because that one other hunter is going to ruin the 500. And a mature buck is the same way. He would rather bed in 5 acres where he never encounters humans than 500 acres where he encounters somebody just every once in a while. And that goes back to what I'm saying. People don't understand how little human intrusion it takes to bump a mature buck.
Yeah. You hear some guys that own farms and mess around with them a lot act like the deer get accustomed to them. Do you think that's kind of malarkey, or do you think they?
Oh, I absolutely they do.
Okay.
Well, on my farm, I believe my deer know my smell over other, because, and the reason I say that is if I'm hunting by myself and a deer happens to get downwind of me, they don't just jump out of their skin, start blowing and snorting and running to the next county.
Yeah.
They'll stop and stick their nose in the air, maybe flare their tail and trot back into the woods. But if I got a cameraman with me, it's a totally different story. If I got a cameraman with me, they flip out, they're blowing and snorting and running, and half a mile away, you hear them still blowing. I think that being on this farm, I'm taking care of, I got a small pasture where I got some cattle, and, I'm always mowing in the summer, taking care of my food plots. And I think these deer have learned my smell, and they can tell me from another human being.
Yeah. I heard Lee Lukoski say that he feels like sometimes he doesn't shoot his deer until they're 6 or 7 years old. And he's like, I don't know if they really care if I'm there or not sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, that has to, like, I've never been on a property or owned a property like that. Something I'd love to do one day, but that has to be a cool feeling. Like to have I don't know, it just almost feel like not saying they're pets, but like you raise these things and they almost have like a respect for you or something. Like they kind of depend on you for something.
Well, it doesn't happen overnight. No. It takes, when I started on this property 30 some years ago, if I'd bump a deer, he'd take off across the open ag field to the next woods 2 miles away. Today I bump one and just kind of trots to the other side of the property, and I go over there and he kind of runs back. And the other day I was looking for shed antlers and went in this little track of cover on my place and busted a bunch of deer, and they ran out into an open ag field, and they went about 100 yards out there, and they stood and watched me as I was searching their bedding area for antlers. And when I left, they came right back in because I had a trail camera on a fence crossing right there, a cell cam. And literally within 10, 15 minutes of me being done, these deer are walking right back in.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen right out of the gate. You got to build a foundation. And then with each successive generation of deer, it becomes more ingrained in their minds that this is the safest place in the neighborhood. And they seem to pass it on. Some interesting reading. If you get on the internet, do a search for red deer and Berlin Wall. And what happened in Europe when the Berlin Wall came down in the 1980s, that wall separated Czechoslovakia from, I think, East Germany or West Germany, one of the two. And that wall was patrolled by soldiers from each side, and those soldiers would shoot the red deer and for food. Well, the wall came down, and for like over 20 years later, the deer on each side refused to cross, even though the wall was no longer there. Generations later, those deer refused to cross where that wall had once been. That's how ingrained it becomes in their minds. And I don't know how they pass that on from generation to generation, But I've seen it on my farm, now as long as I've been doing this, that with each passing season almost, the local deer just become more or feel more secure on my place than they did before. And they just almost refuse to leave. That's how secure they feel. Now they do leave, at night. They'll go out and feed in the ag fields and they don't stay on my place 100% of the time. But when the heat's on, guess what? They come running to my place. Somebody bumps them on another property across the field or whatever. They know where the safe spot's at and they come running back. But it's really interesting. If you do a search on red deer Berlin wall, and there's all kinds of articles on it. There's one in the Wall Street Journal. Fascinating reading that those deer, those red deer, we're not talking whitetails, but I think it relates. 20 years after that wall came down, those deer that were alive, obviously were not alive 20 years before.
Yeah.
They still refused to cross where that wall had been.
That's crazy. Instincts that haven't left them yet.
Yep.
Yeah. You mentioned trail cams a little bit. And that's something that I struggle with a little bit is my trail cam strategies. How do you use trail cameras, Don?
Well, a little bit different than most people, because most people are sticking them out there and they're trying to find a buck that's daylighting, and then they want to run in and start hunting that deer. Well, I'm using annual patterns of that buck. So, if I was getting his picture at a certain location, say the first week of October a year ago, I know that this coming season, the first week of October, where he's going to be. First week of November. I mean, you get in the heat of the rut, and that throws it off a little bit. But in the early season, especially, those bucks shift from a summer range to a fall range. And when they do, that shift happens with a individual buck. He's going to shift his range the same time every year within a couple days. That's how close it is. I mean, you can almost mark it on your calendar. So, I'm using the bucks that I'm hunting. I've watched them grow up. I run enough trail cameras that I've seen those bucks for multiple years, and I'm always tracking a large number of bucks, and some of them get killed and things like that. But the bucks that I'm potentially going to hunt this coming fall, I've got anywhere from 2 to 4 years of history with them. And I use that history to know what that buck's going to do before he even does it. If you put your trail camera out and you're waiting for that buck to daylight and boom, he daylights, you got his picture, now it's time to go hunting, you're a step behind that buck. I'm a step ahead of him. I know what he's going to do before he does it. And I'm there waiting on him when it happens. Instead of chasing his tail, I'm sitting there waiting on him to show up. And it's just uncanny how often it happens. So, I don't need to be out checking trail cameras once a week in the season, or I don't even really need to have cell cams, because the data that I'm using it in future seasons.
Yeah. That's where I'm at with it. I've been running cell cameras for many years now. And I really can't contribute a deer to one of them, and you pay all this money every month to have them on. And then it's like, I think you'd almost be better off just running a fleet of regular SD card cameras and letting them soak all year, and then hunt off sign or off, trail cam pictures from last year, like whatever, or historical data that you have. Mm-hmm. And then in January or whenever, go and collect your SD cards and just bank up more of those days. And I think you're right. Like seems like people chase around trail cam pictures all season with all the, cell cameras have gotten so affordable. And as far as the price of the products went way down the last couple of years, it's kind of becoming a problem for some people. They're cool. It's cool.
I think trail cameras save about as many bucks as they kill.
Yeah.
For everyone that gets killed because he got his picture taken, there's another one that gets saved because the guy running the camera can't stay out. He puts too much human intrusion, just checking cameras, tips the buck off. The buck moves, relocates, or at least avoids that area where the camera's at and where he detected the human was.
Yeah. You don't have to answer this if you don't want, if you got something in the works or something, but what's your favorite trail camera, Don, to use? Like a regular card camera and then your cell cameras. You got a favorite one?
Reconyx, hands down. There's nothing even close out there. And I've tested them on the same tree, facing the same direction. And I've yet to find a camera that can even keep up with the Reconyx 50%. So if I put both of them facing the same direction on the same post or whatever, look them both a month later, whatever, 6 months later, the Reconyx will have at least double the pictures of the other one, and it'll have a deer or some wildlife, something on every camera. It's not like it's false pictures. Trigger speed's good, battery life's good, just dependable. When you chase giants, you can't afford to miss a picture when one comes by. Mm-hmm. And the big knock on Reconyx, and Reconyx doesn't pay me a penny either, or even send me a free camera. The big knock on Reconyx is they're expensive. Well, they're actually the cheapest camera out there, because if you divide the life of that camera by the cost, there's nothing cheaper. I've been using Reconyx since 2010. Every Reconyx I ever bought, I'm still using, or it got stolen. And I've had to send a few in over the years and have repairs, but usually the repairs are maybe $35 at most. But you got a camera that year after year after year, you can use it. And if you just divided the cost of that camera by 10 years, you got the cheapest camera out there. And, I hear guys saying you ought to use this brand or that brand, blah, blah, blah. They're the best. Well, the quality of the picture, there's a lot of cameras out there that take a quality picture. But the question is, how many pictures are they missing? And how long is that camera going to last? Reconyx is the cheapest and the most dependable and misses the least amount of pictures.
I've heard a bunch of people say that. I mean, and you're right. That's just the only thing that holds people back from getting them things is the cost. But if you look at it in the long term, you're probably right. Because man, they are disposable. Cameras seems like nowadays. Like you go through them every couple of years.
Yeah, and I gave up on it. I used to have Reconyx, and then I had other brands for like public ground or even permission properties where I thought there might be a chance that somebody could steal it. And finally, I gave up. I mean, the last year that I had other cameras, I kept hearing how good Browning, and I'd already went through every brand that you can imagine. And people tell me, oh, Browning, you got to try Browning, you got to try Browning. I bought 12 brand new Browning cameras in June. And by the end of August, half of them either weren't working or I'd had to send them back. Customer service was terrible. Finally, I just sold everything I had that wasn't Reconyx. And I just said, if it gets stolen, it gets stolen. That I would rather have a good one out there and know that I got a buck's picture when he come by. These other cameras, I'm checking them, and I know that half the deer that came by didn't get their picture. So if you're going to chase giants, you can't afford to miss pictures.
And I'll say this, some of the more household name trail cameras that everybody has, cell cameras, they 100% miss pictures over like regular SD card cameras. I have a buddy, he put a he put a trail camera up over a cell camera up over the same exact scrape I did. Now they were different angles, but I'm talking like they were 10 feet apart. And I'm like, I want to put this regular SD card camera up. And it was a cheapo one. It was one we had on public land. And we kind of kept track of it. And at the end of the season, I bet I had probably a dozen more encounters on my trail camera than he did on his cell camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what that is, if it's some kind of a delay in the signal or something that they miss things or what it was. But I was shocked. I was like, wow, that's a stagnant difference. I mean, there was daylight pictures of mature deer that he never got on that trail camera, not once. So,
yep,
opened my eyes a lot.
He had no idea what he missed either.
Nope, I know about it.
Yeah.
No, he knows too. We were sharing information just to see how different they were. I'm not so sure, and maybe Reconyx isn't this way, but I'm not so sure those cell cameras have something funky with them where they miss things over. I don't know if the processing inside them is slower than a regular SD card camera, but it just seems like there's something going on with them to me. Or deer are onto them or notice something about them.
Yeah, I agree. There's something going on there, because even the Reconyx cell cameras, I don't get many pictures as with a regular Reconyx non-cell.
Yeah. We've seen the same exact thing, Don. We run a bunch of cameras on public land around here. I live right in the middle of the Hoosier National Forest. And of course, I got a group of buddies that we kind of all share data with. We got a lot of public land around here. And last few years, we've really noticed that our regular SD card cameras, we'll put a cell camera out in a spot we think is good, and just in the mindset of, we should put a cell camera here in case it gets active. And those spots seem to, at least for the camera wise, you don't see much activity on them. And then you go in the same area and you check a regular card camera you put out, and they're like, these deer are in the same area, and you go, all of a sudden you've had 6 different shooters on that camera for some reason. It's like, well, why are they avoiding the one with the cell camera on it?
Yep, I had a podcast about that. A bunch of people thought I was nuts, and a bunch of people agreed. So there's something to it. I don't have the answer as to why, but definitely something to it.
Yeah. And maybe if you're putting it over a bait pile or something the deer want to come to all the time, then maybe it's a non-issue, but I don't know. Some people are asking about minerals in the comment section, Don. Travis was saying adding micro minerals like zinc, copper, magnesium, iodine, etc. in the soil. What are your thoughts on minerals? I know you guys sell a mineral that's really good. What's your experience been with minerals on your properties?
Well, I can't use them on my properties in Illinois, but I've got some properties in Ohio. I'm involved with a couple other guys where we buy properties, develop them, and then resell them. And we use minerals there. And minerals do work, but it's not like most people think. It's a long-term investment. You can put the mineral out, in the spring, and they'll eat it all summer. They're not necessarily going to grow bigger racks that summer. It's a complete nutrition program, and it takes about 2 generations of deer to maximize the results that you're going to see from it. So, minerals are a key point. But the other thing is there's not that many good deer minerals out there. Now, there's a lot of good attractants. There's a lot of things that are being sold as deer mineral that will attract deer, absolutely no doubt about it, but they're just missing a lot of the key nutrients that the deer need. And then there's the formulation of these minerals. There's, certain nutrients not only need to be at certain levels, but they need to be in certain ratios with others. So a couple of examples are calcium and phosphorus needs to be in a 2-to-1 ratio, twice as much calcium as there is phosphorus. Well, calcium is fairly cheap, so you usually find calcium in most of your mineral products, but phosphorus is more expensive. And a lot of times that's either lacking or not there altogether. Zinc and copper needs to be in a 4-to-1 ratio. Often it's not. So it's not just how much of these minerals, but they need to be in specific ratios with each other for the deer to properly utilize them.
This year I put out minerals kind of for the first time. We can have them in Indiana. There's some rules during season. You got to cover them up or dispose of them somehow. The conservation officer just told me to lay something over top of them, and that'll be good enough. But I listened to one of your, I think you did a YouTube video about it quite a few years ago about minerals, and that's what I'm going to try to keep building upon those minerals for seasons to come. They are a really good way of getting pictures in the summertime, though, to inventory bucks. I mean, there's almost no better way of doing it in the summertime, to me at least.
Yeah, it works great. That's when they crave those minerals the most. And they'll actually start about this time of the year as they're coming out of winter, and it just builds into the summer when those bucks are really growing their racks. And when the does are nursing their fawns, that's when they need it the most. And that's when they'll hit the mineral licks the hardest. But, even a poor mineral that's 95% salt, they're still going to hit it.
Yeah. Where do you like to put minerals at?
Oh, in easy to access locations. I don't want to have to tromp deep into the property and create human intrusion. Human intrusion is minimizing human intrusion is behind everything I do. So if I can put it around the edge of a food plot or, some someplace that has really easy access where I'm not disturbing the property. Because I don't care if they eat it at night. I mean,
Yeah.
just get it out there and so they can get it. It's not like I'm trying to bring them in daylight.
Yeah, that's true. And they'll find it if they need it. They'll find the minerals one way or
Right.
another. Especially the ones that smell like cherry and everything else they got now.
Yep.
Would you start putting them out right now? Then I know you mentioned they start hitting them
Yeah, absolutely.
this prime time. Then
Yep.
to get them out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I need to get to work on some of this stuff. Someone was asking in the comments what your thoughts on kill plots were.
Well, I think they have their place, but I use the analogy of comparing food plots to restaurants for people. So a small food plot is like a fast food restaurant. It's like your McDonald's. So if you're hungry and you're driving by McDonald's, you may stop and eat, but you're not driving 10, 15, 20 miles out of your way to eat at McDonald's.
Yeah.
McDonald's has no pulling power. A small food plot has no pulling power. If a deer's walking by, yeah, he may stop and eat, but you're not going to pull him from a quarter mile away to come and hit your little kill plot. A big plot has pulling power. That's where you can pull all the deer from your sanctuary, your property every afternoon to one big food plot and pull your neighbor's deer to the same plot, especially when you get into late season and food sources are limited. Now, with that said, a small food plot can be used to enhance a good stand location and make it a better. So every time I look at a stand location, I'm always thinking, what can I do to turn this good stand site into a great stand site? And, it's maybe planting a couple of fruit trees right there at that location. It's maybe blocking a deer trail that's just out of my shooting range to push more deer up closer to the stand where they're in shooting range. Just a whole lot of different things you can do to make a stand better. And one of those is a small kill plot right by that stand.
Yeah. Something I know, maybe you're not the godfather of it, but you're one of the first people I heard talk about it is mock scrapes. Are you a guy that puts a mock scrape at every one of your stand locations?
No, absolutely not. In fact, very, very, very few stand locations. I use them more to inventory the bucks on a property. It's human intrusion. Once again, you got to go in and you got to make that mock scrape. When I go in and hunt a stand, I probably haven't been to that stand in months since the spring before. And I want the element of surprise on my side every time I go hunt as much as possible. I use the mock scrapes out in areas where the deer probably are not even going to be unless it's daylight for the most part. And I can get just about any buck on the property to visit a particular mock scrape. And when I do, I'm going to get his picture, and it's probably going to be at night, but it tells me what bucks are on the property, and it just tells me if there's a shooter there.
Yeah. That's gotten really popular over the last several years. And it does seem like a lot of people are putting them right over top of where they're wanting to hunt and, I guess try to trick deer into coming. Maybe it works sometimes, but.
Well, it does work sometimes, and more on young, immature deer than mature deer. Mature deer are a totally different species, and that's what keeps most deer hunters from killing them is they want to hunt mature deer the same way they hunt younger deer. And they just think that it's just a matter of time. I'm not killing giants because there's no giants around or there's no mature bucks around. Usually that's not the case. Usually they've put too much pressure on their property, and the buck catches on to them way quicker than they catch on to the buck.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on all the technology in hunting right now? Sorry, I'm kind of going all over the place. I'm just things popping into my mind I wanted to talk to you about, like with the cell cameras and the drone stuff. And I had a guy on that's a professional fisherman, and the technology is creeping into fishing really severely too. Are we at a tipping point with technology and deer hunting, or what are your thoughts?
Well, my personal opinion is we've already gone too far. I started back in the day when basically compound bows were new.
Yeah.
Guys were hunting with recurves, and then the compound came out. That's how far back I go. And, I was probably hunting for, let me think here. I was hunting for probably 25 years before a trail camera existed. So I'm old school. I mean, I'm big time old school. It wouldn't bother me one single bit if they outlawed compound bows, crossbows, expandable broadheads, cell cameras. I wouldn't even care if they made you whittle your own bow. Bow hunting was meant to be a challenge. And people have done everything they can to take the challenge out of it. When I started, literally the success rate in my home state of Illinois for bow hunters was less than 5%. A lot of times it was 3-4%. So out of 100 people buying a bow tag, only 3 or 4 of them killed a deer. And yeah, deer herds exploded, but at the same time, technology did too. And bow hunting was not meant for everybody. Every hunter was not meant to be a bow hunter. It was a challenge that only some people accepted, and they did so knowing the success rate was very low. Well, most bow hunters today don't even understand that whole concept because they never lived in such a time. I think we've already been way past the tipping point on technology, and the drones are just the drones are a game law violator's dream. I mean, you can fly that drone from 2 miles away. You can pull into who knows where, and you can scout every square foot of, especially with the thermals, every square foot of property for a 2-mile radius around where you're hiding, and find the biggest buck in the neighborhood, know exactly where he's bedded, slip up on him, and shoot him in his bed, especially for a gun hunter. I'd like to see drones just totally outlawed, amongst a lot of other things, but it's never going to happen. I'm probably just an angry old white man that has lived past his prime and wish things would return to the good old days, and they're never going to.
I'm a little bit. I'm kind of an old soul. I still hunt with a longbow from time to time, and I would tend to agree with you on most of those things. But the drones, it just feels so gross to me. Like you see these videos of guys flying over and these deer are looking up at the drone. Like I'm much like, just leave the dang things alone. Like why we got to be flying small aircrafts over and spying on them? Like we're already hunting them and bugging them enough. Like quit, just leave them alone. That's the feeling I get when I see those guys using drones all the time. It just feels a little bit gross to me.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I mean, I think from a land management standpoint, they can be a great tool. But I think it's so ripe for abuse that I'd just rather see them disappear because it's so easy for someone to use one the wrong way, and it'd be so difficult to catch them doing it.
Yeah. The crossbow thing too. I made a video about this a while back ago, and I think people like get the wrong impression of why a lot of people are not a fan of crossbows. It's almost like people think that you're crapping on the hunter for using it, and it's like maybe some people are, but it's like it's not really about the hunter; it's about the resource. Like we feel like maybe we shouldn't use crossbows because it's too hard on the deer, or whatever the case may be. And we got this yin and yang in the hunting world that we think we're out to get everybody. It's like, we don't want you killing a big buck. It's like, I don't think most people think that way. I think they think like, man, this is not good for our deer herds.
Well, for me, it just goes back to man wants to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah.
And they'll do anything they can. And the crossbow, there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever that a crossbow is easier to shoot than a compound or a recurve. And I said before, I don't care if they outlaw compounds, I'll still be out there bow hunting. And the thing of it is, I don't come down on the bow hunters so much. I think it's the state game agencies who've done just a terrible job managing the resource. There's not one state that's doing a good job managing the resource. I just wish any state, I don't care what state it is, would give me full control of their state's deer herd. I'd turn it into the best deer herd on the planet in about less than 5 years. And
it wouldn't be that difficult,
I would make them more money than they've ever made on it, mismanaging it at the same time. There would be hunters would be lined up with requiring 10 bonus points to hunt a state with a good managed deer herd. They just don't exist anymore.
Yeah. And all the ones that used to are dwindling away. I mean, I'd like to get someone at the state level here in Indiana to get on the show and just talk about what actually goes on. I mean, maybe they wouldn't say, but just their rhyme with their reason, or, what influences states to make decisions on deer populations. And I don't know.
A lot of it's politics. A lot of them have things mandated by the legislature. And so a lot of it is that there's not a true biologist does not have 100% control of the deer herd. The states are managing the deer herd for money and not for a quality, well-balanced deer herd. And, it's not got anything to do with the population levels. You can have a population level of the deer herd, whatever you wanted, and still have a quality deer herd.
Yeah.
But they're just out there indiscriminately killing deer and selling tags. That's what it's all about. And that they love the crossbow because it gets more people buying tags during archery season.
Yeah. Then you're seeing now some states outlawing trail cameras like on public land and stuff, and everybody's all up in arms on that. It's like, well, man, like people are abusing that right to use a trail camera. Like whenever you buy 70 of them and then you sprinkle them on every scrape that you find, it's like, what you're putting so much pressure on the deer herd doing that. And then you're it's kind of an unwritten rule on public land hunting. It's like, you're kind of almost claiming a spot. A lot of people won't hunt a spot if there's someone that has to put a trail camera there or something. It's like, you do that on a few properties and you're running 70 of them. It's like, it's kind of not fair to everybody else. And it's not really not fair for the deer to have, every time they go by a scrape, there's a, human's odor there.
Well, I don't think there's a deer alive in the Midwest that hasn't had his picture taken.
Yeah. I was talking to I was talking to Chad Sylvester that used to work for Exodus there, or own Exodus, and he gave me some numbers about how many more trail cameras went into the market last year compared to years past. In like the last 3 years, it was like millions more compared to the years before we're going into the market. And he said it's just crazy how many more trail cameras are being sold the last couple of years compared to 5 years ago.
The good news is most of them are junk and missed pictures. So
yeah, but the thing is you got people in the woods putting them up and messing with them. So
that's true.
And then now you're bumping deer around and you're making them nocturnal, and I don't know. Like you said, maybe we're just grumpy deer hunters that need to relax a little bit, but I don't think so. I get tired of seeing a trail camera in every tree on the public land. That's gets a little old, but I would be completely fine if they outlawed them. Tomorrow. They won't though.
They're not going to be. They may outlaw them on public land. They'll never do it on private. They'll never be able to.
No, I don't think they should either. I mean, I think you should be able to do whatever you want to on your piece of private, but yeah, it is what it is. I have a buddy that he's always shot a longbow. He never went to a compound, and very successful guy. I've talked about him on here. He's killed 47 big game animals in out of the 50 states. He's got 47 of them. And I asked him one time, I'm like, why didn't you ever, like, he was in that era when the compounds, he's probably about your age, Don. And I was like, why didn't you ever go to the compound? He's like, man, that's what's wrong with this world these days. He's like, everybody wants to take the shortcut and make things a little bit easier and a little bit easier. He's like, not just deer hunting. He's like, it's everything. He builds homes for a living. He's like, I don't even want to work anymore because that's how people operate their businesses now. They just want to take shortcuts and screw you over. And he's like, I just refuse to do that. And I'm like, yeah. So I have a lot of respect for him. He's not on social media or anything, and just kind of does what he loves and doesn't really let much outside noise affect him.
Well, he's probably smart.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. There's a lot of times where I was a late bloomer for the social media, at least for my generation. I didn't get it until I was out of college and everything. And there's often times I wish, like, maybe I just wish I'd have never went to it. But
I get it.
now I'm on the internet talking about deer hunting every week.
I do it for business, but once I retire, I'm not sure I'm keeping it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where I'm at with it. Well, Don, I told you I'd keep you on here for about an hour, and we're over an hour now. I could talk to you about those hot topics all evening, but
Yeah.
where I linked your guys' website down below, and then your real world wildlife products there too.
Okay.
Is there anywhere else you'd like for people to go check you out? You got a pretty good YouTube channel.
Yeah, the Chasing Giants podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I put that out once a week, and so.
Do you enjoy doing the podcast?
Oh, I do. Yeah.
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 I'm always talking about deer hunting anyway. So if I'm not recording a podcast, I'm on the phone talking to somebody one-on-one. So
how many properties do you look at a year now?
Oh, average probably the last 4 years, I've averaged about 75, 80 a year.
That's a busy spring.
Yeah, it starts right after Thanksgiving, about the 1st of December, and goes to about the 1st of April. So got about another month to wind her up, and then it'll be on to food plot season, planting food plots here at the farm.
Yep. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for hopping on tonight. Don, I appreciate you getting on and talking little deer hunting and helping me with the property there. And everybody, have a good evening, and God bless, and talk to you later. Bye.